Alright, good morning everyone. We are here with break 421. This is another 26 League Heroes combo break featuring a 26 League Heroes case, a 26 League Heroes hobby box, 4 26 League Heroes starter packs, and 3 26 League Heroes blaster boxes. The last of our breaks with the blaster boxes. All the next ones coming up all have the double hobby and 5 starter packs. Few spots left in those that are already listed, as well as 4 coming soon, guys. So make sure you add each of them to your wish list so you get a notification once they go live. And that's the best way to get your team. Alright, our team list for today. Broncos, Nathan Seal. Raiders, Gareth Lawson. Bulldogs, George Grispos. Sharks, Terry Lynch. Dolphins, Greg King. Titans, Stephen Murray. Manly, Greg King. Storm, Patrick Donovan. Knights, Jeremy Thomas. Cowboys, Paul Cohen. Eels, Steve Harris. Panthers, Dean Mich. Rabbitohs, John Turner. Dragons, Johnny D. Roosters, William Goodger. Warriors, Paul Smith. Tigers, Johnny D. And here we are. We have everything. Let's get into our starter packs there in front. We'll open all 4 and get our bonus packs out. Before I go any further, let's bring up the chat. Good morning. A few people already in. G'day, guys. And our team list. There we go. Alright, that's our 4 starter packs. League heads Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Cam Munster for Storm. Will Penasini for the Eels. And last league head Stars. Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Alright, let's get these open. Everyone got their entry into the Pick the Score giveaway, only in the Facebook group. Hope everyone got their tips in for this round, round number 3. Alright, last starter box. Blaster box. Alright, first gold bang, Tyron Wishart for the Storm. Damien Cook for the Dragons. Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. And Reece Walsh for the Broncos. And our last two, Ruben Garrick for Manly. And Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Alright, finished with the scissors. They can go away. Let's get into the packs. League heads, Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Colour die cut Big Tino for the Titans. Luminous Tui Kamika for Storm. Bang Tyron Wishart for Storm. Luminous Jake Trbojevic for Manly. League heads, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons. League heads, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous White for Roosters. Colour die cut Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous Jack Bostock for Dolphins. Game breakers Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Red Triumph for the team Rabbitohs. Luminous Stefano Utikamanu for Storm. Game breakers Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. Colour die cut Sione Katoa for Sharks. Luminous Terrell May for the Tigers. League heads Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Tiana Penatani Gray for Sharks. Bang Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Roger Tuivasa Sheck for Warriors. League heads, Big Tino for Titans. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Mercury, Dylan Walker for the Eels, number 355. G'day, mate. Well, this is the first numbered hit of the break. We had our Gold Pangs and our League Head Stars out of the starter packs and the blasters. Tommy Turbo in the Luminous for Manly. Bang, Philip Sammy for the Titans. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. League heads, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos. There was nothing wrong with Noise. Noise is nothing wrong. Don't worry. Bang, Reese Welsh for the Broncos. Luminous Bo Fermor for Titans. League heads, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. KO Weeks, Luminous for the Raiders. League heads, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous Luke Lawley for Tigers. Bang, Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Brian To'o for Panthers. Game breakers, Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Zahara Tamara for the Raiders. League heads, Joash for Eels. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. I've gone Storm tonight. They're at home. As it keeps getting advertised at the grand final replay, Storm want retribution. Yeah, game breakers, Ruben Garrick for Manly. I think it's definitely going to be a tough one for Broncos, who are definitely going to be hungry for it. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a good game. Moses Sulai, Luminous for the Dragons. Yeah, I've gone Storm purely based on their at home. The atmosphere there is going to be intense. League heads, Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Connor Watson for Roosters. Colour die cut, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Game breakers, Emily Bass for the Tigers. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for Broncos. Game Breakers Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Luminous Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Red Triumph Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. Mercury Nathan Cleary for the Panthers, number 370. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. League Heads Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Roosters or Panthers. Red Triumph Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Colour die cut Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous Roger Tulvasa Sheck for the Warriors. We regularly hit them. So I'm used to doing only big breaks. It's very rare that we do a couple of boxes here and there. And normally when I'm not breaking on camera, I'm sitting at the table breaking to list on the website or packing orders. Packing orders, as much as I hate some of them, I do enjoy others. Going back to picking out 1963 cards and all those earlier years. Things that I never got to open myself and things like that. Getting to see them. Because I don't normally see them, they come in, get listed and put in the box. So unless I pick the order for them, it's not something that I go across. League Heads Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Luminous Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. And I'm pretty sure it was you that asked me what one of my favourites of all times are. And I didn't think of it at the time, and it's not actually a card, but we sell them. It's the 1988 Dandy stickers. I wish Select or even TLA, if they would have done something like that, but yeah, where it's the club rivals and things like that. It was cool. It's worth looking at on the website, guys. I'm not sure how much is in stock. Obviously, being an older thing, it's hard to come by, but I think they're cool. Game Breakers, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. And once again, that comes down to being able, picking orders and that. I was only a year old when they were around, so it was a bit, I never got to experience them at the time. Zach Hosking colour die cut for the Raiders. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Game breakers, Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Guessing selector not going to be doing master sets. Not that we've heard of or aware of at the moment. Obviously, it's something that we will be chasing. Yeah. Luminous white for the Roosters. League heads, Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Bang, Jalen de Groot for the Titans. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. League heads, Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Alright guys, that's the end of the packets out of our starters and blasters. Let me just tidy these up. And half a box here that we prepared earlier. Doesn't quite take them all, that's alright. They can wait for the next one. Let's move our hobby out of the way. Get our knife. Right, we need that. We're going to move that out of the way. Box number 1. Let's do it. Bang, Blaze Tulagi for Panthers. Luminous Jessica Surgis for Roosters. Game breakers, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous Bailey Haywood for Bulldogs. League heads, Reece Welsh for the Broncos. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Game breakers, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Ali Latua for the Warriors. Game Breakers Max Platt for the Dolphins. Luminous Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Bang Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Corey Horsburgh for Raiders. Game Breakers Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Bang for Storm. Luminous Alex Sifa for Tigers. League Heads Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Luminous Marky Mark for Roosters. League Heads Maratha Nakor for the Warriors. Yeah, the Game Breakers look cool. I think there's a lot of nice designs in the cards. I definitely don't think they let anyone down with the designs. Wade Egan, Luminous for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Latu Finu for the Tigers. The Etched and the Mercury, they're very much something that I think needs to be appreciated in hand. I don't think pictures do them justice. Bang Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous Ezra Mam for Broncos. The Mercury Sterling, on the other hand, they stand out no matter how they are. They're just a nice looking card. They pop well. League Heads Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. I'm not going to lie, I was looking at a video from Select not long before we went live, and in the AFL they have milestone cards. Where's our milestone cards, guys? I think we missed out on that one. They would have been cool. Hopefully next time. Matthew Fegai, colour die cut for the Dragons. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Cheers, mate. Do you have good cards? As in, what do you mean? Or I misread that at first. Luminous Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. What do you class as good cards? League Heads Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Keanu Kinney for the Titans. There's not much we don't have or haven't had at some point, and probably have again in the future. So pretty much all listed there, and we always aim to try and find older collections to refill gaps. Red Triumph for the Cowboys. Luminous Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Mercury Asaya Iongi for the Eels, number 127. Luminous Katoni Stags for the Broncos. Game Breakers Jai Grey for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Asaya Papali'i for Panthers. I think with this latest release, we're now over 45,000 listings on the website. That's, yeah. League Heads Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. League Heads Ray Stone for the Dolphins. Luminous Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Colour die cut Jaden Campbell for Titans. Luminous Zach Labour for Cowboys. Bang Zach Labour for Cowboys. Luminous Loco Tonga for Dragons. League Heads Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Luminous Luke Brooks for Manly. Gladiators Fanua Pole for the Tigers, number 491. 217 Traders Nathan Cleary signature, I'm assuming. Is that the SAS? Yep. No, that's. Oh, God. Ronaldo Molitalo, Luminous for Sharks. Well, Game Breakers Patricia for the Warriors. Luminous Asaya Katoa for Dolphins. Signature one with gold. I don't remember it having gold. Colour die cut Lindsay Collins for Roosters. Luminous Xavier Savage for Raiders. League Heads Dylan Walker for the Eels. Oh, what's his name? Jared Croker. He's one of my favourite signatures. The cat, or whatever it is that he looks like he draws. Georgia Hale, Luminous for the Titans. Game Breakers Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Luminous Harry Grant for Storm. I wish we'd have a few players do the like the inscriptions that a few of them have done over the years. Whether it be write their jersey number on their jersey numbered card, things like that we've seen. Game breakers, Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. Pretty sure Blake Ferguson did his jersey number on one and his player number on another. Is that right? Sure he did two different things. Yeah, I didn't realise we still had it. There you go. Bang Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. League heads Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous Mitchell Moses for the Eels. League heads Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Red Triumph Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Colour die cut Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. I would like the club player number on the card. Yeah. I agree, Gareth. I like that. I've said that for a little while. Especially with these high numbered cards. There isn't too many teams that wouldn't have player numbers in these numbers. I don't know, I could be surprised there too. Some teams have been around for a long time. Alright, box number 2. League heads Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Game breakers Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Luminous Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. Talking about the Titans, did you see our latest spot Raz was for this Titans spot, and the winner got the blaster box as a bonus as well. League heads Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. Luminous Alfiana Khan Kiera for Titans. Guys, order a few highlights cards. I don't know if we'll be that lucky, John. We'll have to wait and see. But yes, we did. To us, the highlights are just the player in focus cards. We will be ordering them the same as we order player in focus, or a little bit different, but we'll be listing them the same way as we receive them and have them in hand. We will then put them up on the website. League heads Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Ali Briganshaw for the Broncos. Colour die cut, Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. See, everyone's saying 213, but I reckon we've got to aim higher. We've got to start predicting where he's going to finish. That's going to be the number. Jermaine Isaaco, a luminous for Dolphins. Because he's not finished yet. Game breakers, Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Luminous, Jerome Hughes for the Storm. League heads, Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous, Casey McLean for the Panthers. Red Triumph for the Roosters. Luminous, Isaac Tago for Panthers. Bang, Ali for Warriors. Luminous, Chance Nicole Cockstad for the Warriors. Game breakers, Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. Red Triumph, Roger Tulvasa Sheck for Warriors. Luminous, William Kennedy for Sharks. League heads, Valami Kickout for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. Game breakers, Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. Colour die cut, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. League heads, Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous, Kurt Mann for Bulldogs. League heads, Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous, Lycan King Togia for Dragons. Game breakers, Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Luminous, Jermaine McEwen for the Knights. Bang, Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. James Tedesco, Luminous for the Roosters. League heads, Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Bang, Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Luminous, Keezy Apps for Tigers. Game breakers, Reece Walsh for Broncos. Luminous, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous, Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Colour die cut, Jalen de Groot for Titans. Luminous, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. League heads, Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous, Samaima Torfa for the Raiders. Emery Gula, die cut for Dragons. Luminous, Tamir Martin for the Warriors. League heads, Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Bang, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Bang, Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous, Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. Gladiators, Loco Tonga for the Dragons, number 33. Luminous, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Game breakers, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Mercury, Max King for the Bulldogs. 303. Luminous, Dominic Young for Knights. Game breakers, Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous, Addo Carr for the Eels. Bang, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Molly Olika R2 for Manly. Game breakers, Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. League heads, Hamoli Olika R2 for Manly. Luminous, Max Plath for Dolphins. And last packet for box number 2. Gold Triumph. We'll save that one for the end, guys. Luminous Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. I think that's been our best last packet hit for 26 League Heroes yet. I might have to bring back lucky last pack. Let's go. I'd lost faith in it, but you know, with that one, it restores some. Good idea. Colour die cut Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous Cameron McInnes for Sharks. League Heads Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous Trent Leroux for Storm. Red Triumph for the Sharks in the team. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Game Breakers Jareem Bula for the Tigers. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. League Heads Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Murata Nakor for Warriors. Bang Matthew Tomoko for the Raiders. Luminous Moses Leota for Panthers. Game Breakers Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Triumph AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Mackenzie Wheel for Cowboys. League Heads Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. League Heads Mitch Kenny for Panthers. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Bang Philip Semi for the Titans. Luminous Connor Watson for Roosters. Game Breakers Alex Twal for Tigers. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. League Heads Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Merc Mercury, Daniel Tupou for the Roosters, 164. Luminous, Philip Sammy for the Titans. League heads, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Bang, Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous, Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Game breakers, Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous, Dylan Walker for the Eels. League heads, Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Luminous, Zahara Temera for the Raiders. Colour die cut, Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. League heads, Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous, Lockie Galvin for Bulldogs. Game breakers, for White for Roosters. Luminous, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Bang, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous, Savala for the Roosters. League heads, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous for the Storm. Game breakers, Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous, Brendan Smith for Rabbitohs. Colour die cut, Aaron Clark for Warriors. Luminous, Tamale for Raiders. League heads, Spencer Lenu for the Roosters. Luminous, Emma Veron for the Sharks. Game breakers, Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Luminous, Samula Fainu for Tigers. Gladiators, Ethan Strange for the Raiders, number 455. Luminous, Ray Stone for the Dolphins. League heads, Wade Egan for the Warriors. Luminous, Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers, Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous, Tui Kamikamika for Storm. Bang, Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Jake Trbojevic for Manly. Oops. League heads for Storm. Luminous, Blake Brayley for Sharks. 4 packets left for box number 3. Colour die cut, Thomas Jenkins for Panthers. Luminous, Chanel Harris Tavita for Warriors. Bang, Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous, Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Game breakers, Saitili Tupanua for Bulldogs. Luminous, Luke Lolili for Tigers. And last packet for the box. Oh, come on. Colour die cut, Latu Fainu for Tigers. And Luminous, Brian Tyre for Panthers. Cover die cut, Sean Bloor for Storm. Luminous, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Red Triumph for the Panthers. Luminous, Ethan Sanders for the Raiders. Game breakers, Anessa Biddle for the Sharks. Luminous, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Bang, Bradman Best for the Knights. Luminous, Saitili Tupanua for the Bulldogs. League heads, Alex Twile for Tigers. Luminous, Sean Russell for the Eels. Game breakers, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Zali Hopkins for the Dragons. Bang Mitchell Moses for the Eels. Luminous Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. League Heads Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Tui Kamikamika for Storm. Luminous Jermaine McEwen for Knights. Gladiators Felice Kafusi for Dolphins, number 385. Luminous Teddy for the Roosters. League Heads Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Max Plath for Dolphins. Game Breakers Tolator Koala for Manly. Luminous Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Colour die cut Jake Clifford for the Cowboys. Luminous Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Game Breakers Asaya Iongi for the Eels. Luminous Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League Heads Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Jackson Purdue for Cowboys. Bang Xavier Savage for the Raiders. Luminous Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Game Breakers Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. Bang Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Game Breakers Isaac Tago for Panthers. Luminous Tom Starling for the Raiders. League Heads Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Luminous Tamika Upton for Broncos. Mercury Connolly Lumilu for the Dolphins, number 79. Luminous Jesse Ramian for the Sharks. League heads, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Excuse me. Bailey Simonson, Luminous for the Eels. Oh. How does that burp when you get it all out? Colour die cut, Ethan Bullymore for Manly. Luminous Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. League heads, Jack Williams for the Eels. Luminous Ben Trebojevic for Manly. Game breakers, Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Sanua Taruva for Tigers. League heads, Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Will Penasini for the Eels. Bang Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Jonah Pezzett for Storm. League heads, Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Luminous Matthew Tomoko for Raiders. Red Triumph, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous Brian Kelly for the Titans. Colour die cut, Isaiah Yongi for the Eels. Luminous Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Game breakers, Nita Maynard for the Dragons. Luminous Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Bang Jaden Campbell. Luminous Connolly Lumilu for Dolphins. State of Origin Predictor. League heads, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Samuel Stonestreet for the Sharks. League heads, Murray Talagi for Cowboys. Luminous Cameron Munster for Storm. Colour die cut, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tanila Paseka for Manly. And lucky last pack for box number 4. League heads, Roger Tulvasa Sheck for Warriors. And Luminous Sam Walker for the Roosters. Box number 5. Game Breakers, Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Angelina for the Bulldogs. League Heads, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. Bang Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Red Triumph, Big Tino for Titans. Luminous Connor Watson for the Roosters. Game Breakers, Sophie Holliman for the Raiders. Luminous Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. League Heads, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous Billy Walters for the Broncos. League Heads, Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Colour die cut, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous Greg Marsu for the Knights. Game Breakers, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Luminous Cooley Kefu for the Dolphins. Bang Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. Luminous Daniel Tupou for Roosters. League Heads, Jake Trebojevic for Manly. Luminous Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Game Breakers, Keezy Apps for the Tigers. Luminous Dane Gagai for the Knights. Game Breakers, Billy Walters for the Broncos. Luminous Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Red Triumph, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Colour die cut, Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Cameron McInnes for the Sharks. League heads Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous Trent LaRoe for Storm. Game breakers Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Jamal Fogarty for Manly. Game breakers Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous Samula Fainu for the Tigers. League heads Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. Luminous Philip Semi for Titans. Bang Apasai Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Bang Jareem Buller for the Tigers. Luminous AJ Brimson for the Titans. Gladiators Jaden Sewer for the Dragons, number 544. Luminous Marata Nakor for the Warriors. League heads Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Moses Leota for Panthers. Colour die cut Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Jermaine. I think we're good. I dropped out, but I think I managed to get it going again without losing the stream. Bang Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. League heads James Tedesco for the Roosters. Luminous Dylan Lucas for Knights. Colour die cut Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. League heads Gahamat Shabarsky for the Broncos. Luminous Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Bang, Gahamat Shabarsky for Broncos. Luminous Hugo Savala for Roosters. Game Breakers, Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous for Storm. League Heads, Cameron Munster for Storm. Luminous Ray Stone for the Dolphins. League Heads, Chance Nico Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Mercury, Greg Marshew for the Knights, number 318. Luminous Tamale for the Raiders. League Heads, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous Emma Veron for the Sharks. Alright, box number 6. Colour die cut Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. League Heads, Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Jesse Colquhoun for the Sharks. Luminous Keanu Kinney for the Titans. Daly M Predictor. Luminous Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. League Heads, Joash for Eels. Luminous Ruben Garrick for Manly. League Heads, Big Tino for Titans. Luminous Angelina for Bulldogs. Bang, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Luminous Zach Lomax for the Eels. Game Breakers, Kira Dibb for the Cowboys. Luminous Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Bang Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Josh Kerr for the Dragons. League Heads Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Gladiators Cameron Munster for Storm 557. Luminous Billy Walters for the Broncos. League Heads Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Joseph Tarpanay for the Raiders. Red Triumph Tommy Turbo for Manly. Luminous Georgia Hale for the Titans. Game Breakers Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Luminous Greg Marzu for the Knights. Bang Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Kuli Kefu for the Dolphins. League Heads Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Xavier Savage for Raiders. Mercury Milwaukee Photo Ica for the Titans 191. Luminous Appy Nichols for the Warriors. Colour die cut Regan Campbell Gillard for Titans. Luminous Fanua Pole for the Tigers. Colour die cut Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Zach Labour for the Cowboys. Bang Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Luminous Loco Tonga for the Dragons. League Heads Apiso Coruscant for the Tigers. Luminous Luke Brooks for Manly. Game Breakers Emily Bass for the Tigers. Luminous Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. Bang Brian To'o for Panthers. Luminous Jalen DeGroot for Titans. Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. League Heads Scott Drinkwater for the Cowboys. Luminous Cassie Hiku for the Eels. Game Breakers Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Game Breakers Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Luminous Marky Mark for the Roosters. League Heads William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. League Heads Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Helps if I put it in the right slot. Bang Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Wade Egan for the Warriors. Colour die cut Clayton for Lalo for Manly. Luminous Adenfanua Blake for the Sharks. League Heads Dylan Lucas for the Knights. Luminous Latu Fainu for the Tigers. Game Breakers Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Game Breakers Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Mitch Kenny for Panthers. League Heads Ben Hunt for the Broncos. Luminous Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. And this is the last packet in box number 6. Game Breakers Kalen Ponga for the Knights. And Luminous Carl Lawton for the Cowboys. Alright, tidy up base cards and keep going. It was a box number 6, halfway through the case now. Let's get into box number 7. League Heads Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Stefano Yusukamanu for Storm. Game Breakers Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. Mercury Brighton Nakora for the Sharks. Number 355. Luminous Beau Fermor for the Titans. League Heads Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys. Colour die cut Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Sean Kepi for the Rabbitohs. Bang Tamir Martin for the Warriors. Luminous Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Game Breakers Nico Hines for the Sharks. Luminous Tyron Wishart for Storm. League Heads Jacob Little for the Dragons. Luminous Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Colour die cut Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Bang Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Tui Kamikamika for Storm. League Heads Will Penasini for the Eels. Luminous Jake Trbojevic for Manly. League Heads Joseph Atapane for the Raiders. Luminous Sam Verrills for the Titans. Game Breakers Hammer Fido for the Dolphins. Luminous Bradman Best for the Knights. Dalian Predictor. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. League Heads Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Felice Kafusi for Dolphins. Bang Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Luke Lawlilly for Tigers. League Heads Alifiana Campiera for Titans. Luminous Murray Tulagi for Cowboys. Gladiators Trent LaRoe for Storm, number 518. Luminous Chanel Harris Tavita for the Warriors. Red Triumph for the team in Dolphins. Luminous Moses Sulai for the Dragons. League Heads Jason Saab for Manly. Luminous Dylan Walker for the Eels. Game Breakers Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Luminous Zahara Tamara for Raiders. League Heads Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. Luminous Brian To'o for Panthers. League Heads Jeremiah Nanai for the Cowboys. Luminous Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Bang Asaya Youngie for the Eels. Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Game Breakers Mitchell Marnett for the Warriors. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Colour die cut Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous Xavier Willison for the Broncos. Triumph Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Luminous Nafu White for Roosters. League Heads Lindsay Smith for Panthers. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. Bang Connor Watson for the Roosters. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Colour die cut Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Roger Tulvasa Sheck for the Warriors. League Heads Renato Militalo for the Sharks. Luminous Tiana Penitani Gray for the Sharks. Game Breakers Junior Paulo for the Eels. Luminous Tegan Berry for the Dragons. Game Breakers, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Terrell May for Tigers. 2 packets left for box number 7. Bang, Ruben Garrick for Manly. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. Game Breakers, Jason Tormalolo for the Cowboys, and Luminous Blake Brayley for the Sharks. And that finishes off box number 7. Let's go box number 8. League heads, Blake Brayley for the Sharks. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Mercury Paps for Storm, 194. Luminous Apasai Coruscant for Tigers. Red Triumph for the Bulldogs. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. League heads, Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Luminous Jerome Luai for Tigers. Game Breakers, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. Colour die cut, Tyson Frizzell for the Knights. Luminous Leka Halasima for the Warriors. League heads, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous Hammer for the Dolphins. Bang, Reese Walsh for Broncos. Luminous Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Bang, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Luminous Alex Johnston for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Valami Kikau for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers, Tamale for the Raiders. Luminous Nico Hines for the Sharks.
Excuse me.
League Heads AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Lehe Hopewate for Manly. League Heads Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Luminous Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Game Breakers Dane Gagai for the Knights. Luminous Nelson Asafa Solomona for Storm. Bang Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Morgan Smithies for the Raiders. Colour die cut Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Luminous Dean Mariner for the Broncos. Bang Moses Sulai for the Dragons. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Julia Robinson for the Broncos. Luminous Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Gladiators Ben Hunt for the Broncos, number 558. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans. League Heads Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Ethan Bullymore for Manly. League Heads Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous Jesse Colhoun for the Sharks. Game Breakers Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Colour die cuts Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers Chance Nicole Klokstad for the Warriors. Luminous Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. League Heads Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Jareem Buller for Tigers. Bang Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Xavier Coates for Storm. League heads, Dry Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous, Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Colour die cut, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous, Dylan Egan for the Dragons. Bang, Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Luminous, Abby Church for the Eels. Triumph, Asaya Iongi for the Eels. Luminous, Liam Martin for Panthers. Game Breakers, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Spencer Linu for the Roosters. League heads, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Game Breakers, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous, Dylan Brown for the Knights. Colour die cut, Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous, Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. And last packet for box number 8. League heads, Bradman Best for the Knights. And Luminous, Ben Hunt for the Broncos. I'll put these ones in the box. Before we get stuck into the next one, I am going to jump up and grab a quick drink. I will be back in 2 seconds. Alright, we're back. Only gone for a couple of seconds. Let's get into box number 9. Alright. League heads, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. League heads Ethan Bullymore for Manly. Luminous Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Game breakers Kale Hero for the Sharks. Luminous Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Bang Lehe Hopawate for Manly. Luminous Roger Tuivasa Sheck for the Warriors. League heads Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Tiana Penatani Gray for the Sharks. Die cut Ruben Cotter for Cowboys. Luminous Terrell May for the Tigers. Game breakers AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Jack Williams for the Eels. Bang Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Felice Kafusi for Dolphins. Red Triumph Brendan Smith for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Stefano Utkamanu for Storm. Mercury Luciano Leilua for the Dragons, 397. Luminous KO Weeks for the Raiders. League heads Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Bo Thermal for Titans. Game breakers Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Jason Tormalolo for Cowboys. League heads Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous Angus Crichton for Roosters. Bang Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Luminous Alex Twal for Tigers. League heads Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. That's what I thought, John. Luminous Tyron Wishart for the Storm. And a Dally M rookie predictor. Luminous Junior Paulo for the Eels. Game breakers, Jermaine Hopgood for the Eels. Luminous, Kira Dib for the Cowboys. Game breakers, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. A few cards building up for the end. Luminous, Sebastian Bradman Best for the Knights. Yes, what have we got? 6 so far out of 9 boxes. Bang, KO Weeks for the Raiders. Luminous, Glenn Albert Jones for the Warriors. League heads, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Max King for the Bulldogs. Die cut, Sua Wong for the Roosters. Luminous, Tolator Koala for Manly. Bang, Ryan Pappenhausen for Storm. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. Red Triumph, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Luminous, Payne Huss for the Broncos. League heads, Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous, White for the Roosters. The first highlights. Stephen Crichton. We've got number 7, 007. Nice. Too easy. Colour die cut, Nico Hines for the Sharks. So yes, guys, if you're looking for them, they will be up soon. How soon? That could be 24 hours. That could be a week. I'm not sure. Billy Smith, Luminous for the Roosters. Mum in the background who does all the scanning. They're not even getting a look at the moment. So keep an eye out, guys. I'll put a post up once they're up. But they are coming. Game breakers, Trent LaRoe for Storm. Luminous, Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. That was round 1 highlights, William. Stephen Crichton. So the highlights are basically player in focus cards that we've been used to from TLA. Same but different. League heads, Regan Campbell Gillard for the Titans. Luminous, Reese Welsh for the Broncos. The first thing I noticed that's different is they're actually stamped. I think a lot of people will like that because they used to mention that about the TLA ones. Game breakers, Tegan Dimick for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. All good, mate. Making bread. Bang, Braden Trindle for the Sharks. Now I'm curious, is that your job? Are you doing it at home? Luminous Lindsay Smith for Panthers. League heads, Xavier Coates for Storm. Luminous Fletcher Sharp for Knights. And Gladiators, Jacob Carraz for the Bulldogs, 238. Luminous, I'm a Baker. Xavier Willison for the Broncos. I like you. Bakers make the best things. Game Breakers, Isabel Kelly for the Roosters. Luminous Tommy Turbo for Manly. Game Breakers, Hudson Young for the Raiders. Luminous Ethan Strange for the Raiders. 3 more packets for box number 9. League heads, Tom Gilbert for the Dolphins. Luminous Lachlan Elias for Dragons. Die cut, Zach Lomax for the Eels. Luminous Braden Trindle for the Sharks. League heads, Adam Fanua Blake for the Sharks. Luminous Sam Verrills for Titans. And that's box number 9 done and dusted. Let's get into box number 10. League heads, John Bateman for the Cowboys. Luminous Kale Iro for the Sharks. Bang Renato Mulatalo for the Sharks. Luminous Simona Torfa for Raiders. League heads, Luke Brooks for Manly. Luminous Tamir Martin for Warriors. Mercury Alehe Hopawate for Manly, number 63. Luminous Jai Gray for the Rabbitohs. Game Breakers, Zach Labert for the Cowboys. Luminous Reed Marnie for the Cowboys. League heads Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs. Luminous Damien Cook for the Dragons. Colour die cut Jack Bostock for the Dolphins. Luminous Big Tino for the Titans. Bang Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous Adam Dewey for Tigers. League heads Sam Verrills for the Titans. Luminous Dominic Young for the Knights. Colour die cut Adam Dewey for the Tigers. Luminous Hamali Olika R2 for Manly. Game Breakers Whenua Pole for the Tigers. Luminous Lindsay Collins for the Roosters. Triumph Kyle Flanagan for the Dragons. Luminous Milwaukee Fodawaika for Titans. League heads Dominic Young for the Knights. Luminous Ali Briganshaw for the Broncos. Game Breakers Big Tino for Titans. Luminous Val Holmes for the Dragons. Bang Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. League heads Stefano Utikamanu for Storm. Luminous Jerome Hughes for Storm. Oh, instant win. Don't know if we've had one of these. I don't know if we've had one in that team so far in the breaks. Casey McLean, Luminous for Panthers. League heads Corey Horsburgh for the Raiders. Luminous James Fisher-Harris for Warriors. Game Breakers Daniel Tupou for the Roosters. Luminous Scott Drinkwater for Cowboys. Gladiators Cameron Murray for the Rabbitohs, number 496. Luminous Luca Moretti for the Eels. Game Breakers Abby Church for the Eels. Luminous Ryan Pappenhausen for the Storm. Bang, Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous, Gomet Shabarsky for the Broncos. League heads, Patrick Carrigan for the Broncos. Luminous, Jacob Preston for the Bulldogs. Triumph in the team for Broncos. Luminous, Jeremiah Nanai for Cowboys. Game breakers, Luciano Leilua for Dragons. Luminous, Keezy Apps for the Tigers. League heads, Nathan Cleary for Panthers. Luminous, Jason Saab for Manly. League heads, Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Luminous, Cody Walker for the Rabbitohs. Die cut, Dylan Edwards for Panthers. Luminous, Bryden Nakora for the Sharks. Bang, Lachlan Galvin for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Kalen Ponga for Knights. League heads, Jareem Buller for Tigers. Luminous, Lycan King Togia for Dragons. Game breakers, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Cody Nikarima for the Dolphins. We've got 5 packets left for box number 10. Game breakers, Ali for the Warriors. Luminous is Isaac Tago for Panthers. League heads, Herbie Farmworth for Dolphins. Luminous, Alifiana Khan Piera for Titans. Die cut, Zach Hosking for the Raiders. Luminous, Addo Carr for the Eels. Game breakers, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Luminous, Robert Toya for the Roosters. Bang, Terrell May for the Tigers. Luminous, Yasmin Clydesdale for the Knights. And that's the end of box number 10. 2 boxes to go out of the case, plus our hobby box. So 3 boxes in total. Alright, let's keep going. Box number 11. Game breakers, William Kennedy for the Sharks. Luminous Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. League heads, Marky Mark for the Roosters. Luminous Blaze Talagi for Panthers. Game breakers, Kurt Mann for the Bulldogs. Luminous Tom Starling for the Raiders. Bang Bailey Simonson for the Eels. Luminous Tamika Upton for the Broncos. League heads, Tom Starling for the Raiders. Jesse Ramian, Luminous for the Sharks. Colour die cut, Mich Kenny for the Panthers. Luminous Mitchell Barnett for the Warriors. Game breakers, Olivia Higgins for the Knights. Luminous Ben Trebojevic for Manly. Bang Tolator Kuwala for Manly. Luminous Sanua Taruva for Tigers. League heads, Moses Leota for Panthers. Luminous Will Penasini for Eels. League heads, Isaiah Katoa for Dolphins. Luminous Jacob Carraz for Bulldogs. Game breakers, Cameron Munster for the Storm. Luminous Alex Seyfarth for Tigers. Bang Jaden Sewer for the Dragons. Luminous Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. League heads, Mawaki Fodawaika for the Titans. Luminous Ali Leitua for the Warriors. Red Triumph, Melbourne Storm. Luminous Jordan Ricky for the Broncos. League heads, Val Holmes for the Dragons. Luminous Jessica Surgis for the Roosters. Game Breakers Payne Huss for the Broncos. Luminous Mitchell Moses for the Eels. League Heads Bailey Haywood for the Bulldogs. Luminous Harry Grant for Storm. Colour die cut Kale Iro for Sharks. Luminous Renato Molitalo for Sharks. Colour die cut Samula Fainu for the Tigers. Luminous Jonah Pezzett for Storm. Game Breakers Herbie Farmworth for the Dolphins. Luminous Matthew Tomoko for Raiders. Mercury Reese Walsh for the Broncos. Number 35. Luminous Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. League Heads James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. Luminous Sarah Togatuki for the Tigers. Game Breakers Billy Smith for the Roosters. Luminous Connolly Lumi Lou for Dolphins. Bang Hugo Savala for Roosters. Luminous Samuel Stonestreet for Sharks. League Heads Harry Grant for Storm. Luminous Daniel Taniela Paseka for Manly. Die cut Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. Sam Walker Luminous for the Roosters. Game Breakers James Fisher Harris for the Warriors. Luminous John Bateman for the Cowboys. Bang Jermaine Isako for Dolphins. Luminous Jamin Salmon for the Bulldogs. League Heads Keon Kolomatangi for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Cameron Munster for Storm. Triumph Hammer for the Dolphins. Luminous Brian Kelly for Titans. Colour die cut Luca Moretti for the Eels. Luminous Bailey Simonson for the Eels. 5 packets left for box number 11. Game breakers, Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. Luminous, Jesse Southwell for the Knights. League heads, Greg Marzu for the Knights. Luminous, Luciano Leilua for the Dragons. Bang, Katoni Staggs for Broncos. Luminous, Katoni Staggs for the Broncos. And Gladiators, Angus Crichton for the Roosters, number 310. Luminous, Asaya Papaliki for Panthers. League heads, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous, Jacob Saifiti for the Knights. And that's box number 11. Alright, time for the last box of the case, box number 12. Don't forget, we still have our hobby box to finish us off. Excuse me. Bang, AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous, Leka Halasima for the Warriors. Game breakers, Ezra Mam for the Broncos. Luminous, Payne Haas for the Broncos. League heads, Brian Kelly for the Titans. Luminous, Sebastian Chris for the Raiders. Bang, Stephen Crichton for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Phoenix Crossland for the Knights. League heads, Adam Reynolds for the Broncos. Luminous, Angus Crichton for the Roosters. Colour die cut, Egan Butcher for the Roosters. Luminous, Jaden Campbell for the Titans. Game breakers, Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous, Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Gladiators, Renato Molitalo for the Sharks, number 232. Ethan Bullimore, Luminous for Manly. League heads, Connolly Lumi Lou for the Dolphins. Luminous, Jesse Colquhoun for Sharks. League heads Latrell Mitchell for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Hudson Young for the Raiders. Die cut Damien Cook for the Dragons. Luminous Kurt Capewell for the Warriors. Game Breakers Bree Chester for the Cowboys. Luminous Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Bang Jackson Purdue for the Cowboys. Luminous Ruben Cotter for the Cowboys. League heads Liam Martin for Panthers. Luminous Jareem Buller for Tigers. Colour die cut Jesse Arthurs for the Broncos. Luminous Xavier Coates for Storm. League heads Cameron McInnes for Sharks. Luminous Herbie Farmworth for Dolphins. League heads Luciano Leilua for Dragons. Luminous Jamie Chapman for the Titans. Mercury Zach Labutt for the Cowboys, number 292. Luminous Dylan Edwards for the Panthers. Game Breakers Fletcher Sharp for the Knights. Luminous Jerome Luai for the Tigers. Game Breakers Sanua Taruva for Tigers. Luminous Dylan Egan for Dragons. Bang Campbell Graham for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Abby Church for Eels. Red Triumph in the Dragons. Luminous Spencer Lenu for Roosters. League heads Luke Metcalf for the Warriors. Luminous Isaiah Yo for Panthers. Bang Casey McLean for Panthers. Luminous Dylan Brown for Knights. Game Breakers, Cameron McInnes for Sharks. Luminous Matt Burton for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers, Jamie Humphries for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Clinton Gutherson for the Dragons. Colour die cut Jai Arrow for the Rabbitohs. Luminous Ben Hunt for the Broncos. League Heads Max King for the Bulldogs. Luminous Asaya Yongi for the Eels. Triumph Dylan Edwards for the Panthers. Luminous Jack Whiten for the Rabbitohs. Bang Jerome Hughes for Storm. Luminous Ethan Strange for the Raiders. League Heads Kalen Ponga for the Knights. Luminous Lachlan Elias for Dragons. Game Breakers Hamoli Olika Atu for Manly. Luminous Billy Smith for Roosters. 4 packets left for box number 12. League Heads Hamoli Olika Atu for Manly. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs. Game Breakers Nelson of Sofa Solomona for Storm. Luminous Lyshan Albert Jones for the Warriors. Colour die cut AJ Brimson for the Titans. Luminous Reese Welsh for the Broncos. Alright, lucky last packet from the lucky last box of the case. And it gives us a League Heads Cohen Hess for the Cowboys. Luminous Tolator Koala for Manly. Lucky or not, I will leave that up to you to decide. Alright, hobby box time. Let's do it. So the next lot of break, guys, just the reminders. It has a 26 League Heroes case, 2 hobby boxes, and 5 starter packs. Alright, start us off. Payne Haas Luminous for the Broncos, number 682. Gold die cut Cameron Munster for Storm, number 229. Luminous Kurt Capewell for the Warriors, number 458. Luminous Felice Kafusi for the Dolphins, number 166. Luminous Lachlan Elias for the Dragons, number 419. That's a few in a row now. Hopefully we can get out of these luminous packets. Get that double hit going. Here we go. Ethan Strange, luminous for the Raiders, number 490. And a big one, number 81. Reece Walsh in the etched for Broncos. I mean, it's got a 1 in the number. Change the 8 to an O. It's close, you know. It could be. Clutching at straws, Dad reckons, in the background. Well, you got to try these things sometimes, don't you? Jesse Cohen, luminous for the Sharks, number 274. Gold die cut Connor Tracy for the Bulldogs, number 68. And we put it in the right one. There we go. I think we're going to have to check that Sharks file. It may have a few Bulldogs and Dolphins cards in it. Luminous Angus Crichton for the Roosters, 195. And etched Taylor May for the Tigers, number 112. Luminous Taylor Preston for the Bulldogs. Gold die cut Payne Haas for Broncos, number 242. Luminous Jaden Campbell for the Titans, number 237. We have a Platinum Dally M Predictor. So we're just going to grab that one and put that down there. Luminous Reece Walsh for the Broncos, number 78. Don't know why we did that, but anyway, it'll be right. Playmaker Ethan Strange for the Raiders, number 34. Luminous Lawson Albert Jones for the Warriors, number 630. Gold die cut Luca Moretti for the Eels, number 148. Luminous Ethan Bullimore for Manly, number 82. And next up, we have a Mercury Sterling, number 42. I don't know if he's still watching Panthers edits. Nathan Cleary. I'm sure you'll be impressed with that one. Not sure how well the number will show up on camera, but there it is. Luminous Max King for the Bulldogs, number 454. Gold Gladiators, Loco Pacifici Tonga, number 38. We've got 5 packets left. Luminous Dylan Edwards for Panthers, number 395. Luminous Toltor for Manly, number 352. And we've got etched Corey Waddell for Manly, number 134. Luminous Phoenix Crossland for the Knights, number 424. Gold die cut KO Weeks for the Raiders, number 188. Luminous Sebastian Chris for the Raiders, number 96. Gold Gladiators, number 88. Tommy Dearden for the Cowboys. And lucky last packet for the break. Luminous Billy Smith for the Roosters, number 665. And gold die cut Lehe Hopawate for Manly, number 122. Alright, let's go through these hits. First up, Dally M Predictor, number 88. Jerome Hughes for the Storm. We got Patrick Donovan with the Storm. Going down the list, we have our Gold Triumph, number 19. Murray Talagi for the Cowboys. How well I can get that number up on camera. Alright, next up, State of Origin Predictor, number 1. In the gold, not his jersey number, Cameron Munster for Maroons. Well, it says for Queensland on the back. You'd think it said Queensland Maroons, but no. Number 1 for the Storm. Who's Patrick Donovan again? Nice. Alright, moving along. Number 238, Dally M Predictor, Asaya Iongi for the Eels. Dally M Predictor. Wild card 147 for the Broncos. Nathan Seal. Alright, moving along. Dally M Rookie Predictor. Another low number. Number 12. This time for the Cowboys. Alright, and this is the instant win. I said I don't think we've had one for this team, at least in the breaks. Raiders, Gareth Lawson. And the last hit of the break, Dally M Platinum Predictor, number 61 for Manly, Luke Brooks. Greg King with Manly, congratulations. Alright, well guys, that is it. That is all for this one. Plenty of spots left in the next few breaks that are coming through, and with a few more breaks listed as coming soon. So go and check them out on the website, grab a spot and be a part of the next one. Until then guys, catch us all later.